Welcome to Show Jumping Life. I'm David Portner, and I'm here with Catie Staszak from the FEI. Hi, Catie.
Hey, David.
So, okay, where are we today?
So we're here at HITS Desert Horse Park in Thermal, California. We're about to get ready for the big feature event. It's the final event of the West Coast Sub-League of the Longines FEI World Cup Jumping North American League, and it is the Longines FEI World Cup Jumping Thermal.
That's a mouthful. Okay, so tell us a little bit more about the World Cup jumping finals.
Sure. So everyone is gearing up for the World Cup finals, which are going to be held in Paris in April. And it is the prestigious indoor individual championship for show jumping riders. And the entire World Cup League is split into sub-leagues all over the world. And we are part of the North American League. And within North America, we have two sub-leagues, which is the East Coast and the West Coast.
That's great. Okay, so tell us how many riders qualify from the East Coast and the West Coast.
So typically, you'll have 7 riders, U.S. riders from the East Coast and 3 U.S. riders from the West Coast, plus the top 2 riders from Canada and Mexico qualify. This year is a little bit different. We're really fortunate to have the reigning World Cup Finals champion in McLean Ward as part of our East Coast sub-league. So therefore, he gets an automatic qualification, and there'll be 8 U.S. riders qualifying from the East Coast sub-league this year.
So now, even though Eric Neve is registered with the West Coast Sub-League, he's not a U.S. rider, so he wouldn't go to the World Cup if he gets the points he needs.
So here's where it gets more complicated and where you might need to get your pens out. So Eric Neve, he rides for France, but he competes in the West Coast Sub-League. So all he needs to do is get the same amount of points in the West Coast Sub-League as the lowest qualifier, and he gets to go to Paris representing France.
Okay, so riders who are registered with the East can still ride in the West, and this, of course, is the last round or last competition on the West Coast for the season. So Beezy, this means a lot, I guess, to Beezy today, right?
Yes, it'll apply actually to Beezy Madden as well as Charlie Jacobs. They both come over from the East Coast, and they'll be competing here this afternoon. Whatever points they receive, if they are fortunate enough to receive those points, will go toward their East Coast standings, even though they're competing in the West Coast Sub-League today.
Was there a limit to the number of classes that a rider can enter in order to collect points, or can they simply just continue to enter classes and accumulate more points?
Sure, so it would be a bit of an unfair advantage to someone who had a very large string of horses that could just go from show to show and not have to worry about giving their horse a week off and could just bring out another top mount. So there's a limit. You can show in 7 shows. Now you may show in more of them, but you can only earn points for 7 of those. So before you go in the ring, you have to designate whether this particular class will count as a points class for you.
Okay, so give me an example where a rider may have declared, I don't want this to count, and in fact, it may have been a bad decision.
Yeah, so Jennifer Gates is definitely on the cusp of qualifying here for Paris. She'll be competing this afternoon. She competed on the East Coast League in Lexington, had a great finish that day, would have gone home with a lot of valuable points, but unfortunately before the class, she declared the points not to count. So while she went home with a really lovely prize check and a great ribbon, she did not go home with any points for her West Coast Sub-League.
Okay, so now tell us how many points you get for win, place, and how far down the line does it go?
The winner of a World Cup qualifier receives 20 points for their victory, and then it goes down in a descending scale. So second place receives 17 points, third place 15 points, and so on. And it goes all the way down to 16th place, and that person receives 1 point.
Catie, thank you very much for your time. This has been very helpful, and I hope we've all learned a little bit more about Longines World Cup jumping.